Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mike Lenz VO Podcast. My name is Mike Lenz. I'm an entrepreneur and a full-time professional voice actor and audiobook narrator. My goal is to share with you stories from some of the most amazing and inspiring people from all areas of the voiceover industry to help you achieve your dream of becoming a professional voice actor. So please leave me a review over on iTunes and join us over on the web at mikelenzvopodcast.com to be notified of each episode when it comes out. Now, get ready to be inspired. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Mike Lenz VO Podcast. Before we jump into the show, I want to share a great discount from Voice 123. In the show notes, I'll have a link for a 15% discount on a new Voice 123 membership at the $395 level and up. Now, I've had tremendous success on the Voice 123 casting platform, and I have an affiliate partnership with them to provide this amazing discount to my podcast listeners. This discount can be found in the show notes, so be sure to check it out. So on today's episode, my guest is author Grace Worthington. Grace is an accomplished author of sweet romances, and she eats, breathes, and geeks out over sweet rom-coms. So it's no surprise that she believes that laughter and love are a cure-all for pretty much everything in life. After a short stint working in musical theater, where she was often cast in comedic roles, she instills her books with witty banter, lovable characters, and a story that moves your heart and soul. Her inspiration includes quaint towns by the beach, romantic comedy movies from the 80s and 90s, and the crazy shenanigans of her family, which I'm sure we'll get into. So, Grace, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. I am honored to be here, and I'm excited to talk to your listeners.
Thanks, Grace. And I should say before we start that I had the honor of being able to co-narrate with the amazing Jeannie Shinneman, a 4-book series for Grace, and that's how we met. I met on social media while kind of cross-promoting the book, and when each of those 4 books came out, and we've just been, communicating on social media, and I thought it would be really neat to have the perspective of an author on the podcast. We often talk about what it's like to be a narrator and how we do that kind of work, but we can't narrate books unless there are books to narrate, and Grace is on the other side of that equation. So love to have you here to kind of talk about that process. So I thought a really good place to start would be to just share your journey and how you got into writing sweet romance, and maybe just define what sweet romance is for people that might not know what that genre means.
Absolutely. So a lot of people know what a romance book is, but when they hear sweet romance, they're like, well, how is that different? And I would say that's more like the Hallmark side of romance. It's going to be more PG rated. Usually you just have kisses and nothing else beyond that. So no R-rated stuff. But I would also call a lot of the 80s and 90s romantic comedies kind of sweet romance. They leave you feeling good. You get that warm, fuzzy feeling, happily ever after. And you a lot of times laugh and just feel good through the whole movie. So I would compare it more to those favorite rom-coms that we grew up with, or at least I did.
Yeah, me too.
And you asked how I got into writing sweet romance. I was an English major in college, and being an English major, you study a lot of the classics. Now, I love the classics, but for a while, I was only studying these books, many of them that ended kind of tragically and sadly, because a lot of the classics do. Nothing wrong with that. But I found that really, if I wanted to escape, I would go read a book that had a happily ever after. And so that was sweet romance. Now, I'm also a theater nerd, if I can call myself that. I love musical theater. And I found myself drawn to all the musicals and shows that were more comedy rather than tragedy. So if I was looking at Shakespeare, I always leaned towards the comedies where you'd have 4 couples get married at the end rather than have like 10 people dying in the tragedies. Or if it was musical theater, I love the shows that ended up with the couple getting together, the grand gesture at the end. And those were the ones that just stole my heart more than the serious, gritty, even though I performed in some of those. They just left me feeling like, oh, like they're important too. But I had a heart for the happy, the comic. But I didn't really know if I could be funny. And yet I kept getting cast in these funny theater roles. I get cast in the funny sidekick or the lead that, cracks jokes. And I was like, I'm not really a funny person, but it's not about you being funny so much as it is about creating characters who in that moment are funny, and they're not trying to be, they're just who they are. And the moment, the situation they find themselves in usually produces the comedic moment. And I had to look at it from the lens of theater and performance, which I'm sure you do as well, and all narrators do, to kind of find the humor in some of those situations. So that's how I got into sweet romance. It's just always been part of what I love.
Yeah, and I can absolutely relate to that getting into character because I've done a little bit of acting, on camera acting and as well as obviously doing the voiceover work. And the brief times that I've done that, I think the beauty of that type of work is it does allow you to kind of get outside of yourself. You have kind of
Yeah.
this out of body experience if you really do commit to the character. And so even if you're not naturally the same personality as the character, it actually allows you to become that because you embody that those characteristics, which makes it so much fun. That's
Yes.
the joy of acting is being able to do that, getting outside of
Yes.
yourself. So I can absolutely appreciate that. Now, moving into the world of writing, so you're involved in musical theater. You love musical theater. The But then you wanted to transition into writing. What was that? The technical aspect of writing. I'm very interested in because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are creatives, especially actors, who want to perhaps pursue that, being able to create with the written word. Technically, what was that process like for you learning how to actually like just write?
Yeah. So I, in college, I mainly focused on academic writing, which really doesn't help you with the creative side of things. When I got out of college, I didn't really think, oh, I'm going to go be an author now, because I didn't really know what how to be an author. Back then, the floodgates weren't open to creatives quite yet, where we have the internet and all these possibilities. And so I thought you had to go the traditional route of querying, and querying magazines, querying agents, and trying to get in that way. And so what I did was I took grad classes in writing, and that was kind of it didn't teach me how to write. It just gave me the practice and habit of writing, which was really important for me to develop creative writing specifically. And so anyway, I started taking these grad classes to get me into the habit of writing, which was super important. So number one, if you have a passion for writing or creating anything, developing that habit is like the first step. And for me, I respond very well when I have a coach or a teacher. So I started taking these classes, and that gave me the habit of learning how to write and gave me the confidence also to know, oh, I do know how to put together a story. And then the second thing that happened, and this was really pivotal for me, was that I took a class in playwriting because of my background in theater. I thought, oh, this is going to be more of a natural fit because I had been in the theater. I had memorized all these scripts. So I kind of knew, like, I had a sense of story through script. And I took that class, and the professor said to me, I think you should submit this to a contest. And he gave me this form for a contest. It was like for my state's top theater playwriting award. And it wasn't, I had time to like work on my manuscript. And he's like, work on it because your ending needs work. I mean, it was not ready at all. But he's like, submit it to this contest. And I decided I'm going to set that as a goal because the class was ending. And I'm like, I need goals. I need to keep going or else I just won't do this. And so I polished the script, fixed the ending, submitted it, thought I won't hear a thing. And I got the phone call and they said, you won and you get your script produced. And you get to come down to Indianapolis. I live in Indiana, and see it on stage. And I was like, this is amazing. You know what? That should have been like the confirmation that I would be an author. And it was the first step. Like, as I look at my journey, my 20-year journey of becoming an author, it was the first step in giving me confidence. But I went down there and felt like the biggest imposter because I looked around at some of these other people who had way more experience. Some of them were college professors at big universities teaching writing. And I thought, who am I? And this was a while ago. So I was younger. I just felt total imposter syndrome. But I carried that validation forward and told myself, somebody thought there was something in this script that was worthwhile. something. And that helped me move forward from my imposter syndrome. And I still have that. Still to this day, I'll read great books and think I could never do that. But I think back, and every reader, every person who listens, and I'm sure you feel the same way as a narrator, it kind of moves you forward and helps you to reminds you that what I'm doing is worthwhile and valid, and somebody is enjoying it, and so I should keep going, even if it's just for that one reader. So that was really my first step into the world of fiction, was through playwriting and kind of exploring it in a backwards way. Most authors will tell you that they started writing because they started writing, but I actually started writing because of the theater, which is my background. So I came in a different path, but it was the perfect path. And I still say that my dialogue is my favorite part to write in any book that I write.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that. And everybody's journey is different, right? Everybody comes
Mhm.
to it from a different perspective. And I know for me, voiceover, some commonality when I first started getting interested in this creative world, I actually started taking screenwriting classes and wrote a screenplay and had it. It wasn't quite finished, and a friend of mine suggested that I submit it to a competition, and I ended up getting picked to be one of, I think, eight. Screenwriters in the state of New York to participate in this 10-week
Wow,
Writers Institute program with an Emmy award-winning screenwriter as the teacher. And I'm like,
that's
same thing. I'm like,
amazing.
wait a minute. What, me? Are you kidding me? But submerging myself into that program for those 10 weeks, and everybody got their screenplay critiqued by everybody in the class. It was so empowering to me. And I realized at that moment that wanted to be in the creative space somehow. And
Yeah.
that really started to fuel me, which ended up leading me to join a local filmmakers group, which then led me to find out about voiceover training. And ultimately, I pursued that as my career. But I always have this that there was a writing aspect to what I like to do. And I've written some shorts and like I said, a feature length screenplay. And that's a hobby of mine in addition to my job as a narrator and voice actor. We all come at it from different perspectives, and the commonality is creativity,
Hmm.
is the need to create. I think human beings as essential creatures are imbued with being creators,
Yes.
and in so many different ways. And when you get that affirmation, whatever it may be, even if we feel like imposters in the beginning, it's overridden by the drive to create, which
Hmm.
keeps you moving forward. And that's what kept you moving forward, I assume.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I also think failing and then getting up and learning from your failures and you keep going too. But you got to have like those little moments of hope that kind of spur you
Yes.
forward. And it sounds like you had that with that opportunity, and that's really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you talked a little bit about not necessarily an obstacle, but kind of feeling that imposter syndrome
Mhm.
in the journey from where you started to where you are now. What are some of the obstacles that you encountered, and more importantly, what have you learned from them?
I thought that was a great question because I think as creatives, we talk a lot about our victories sometimes and not enough about all the things that hold us back in doing our art, right? So, one of my first ones, and it goes along with imposter syndrome, was just giving myself permission. That was an obstacle for me at the beginning because I kind of was raised in this family. My family was wonderful, but you go to a traditional job every day that has like great benefits and a retirement package, and writing just can be this little hobby on the side. Nothing wrong with doing that, and I did that for many years. But at some point, I had to call myself a writer or call myself a creator and give myself permission to write, even if no one else did. There was no one that really told me, you should absolutely be a writer. No one told me that in words like that. It was just, I felt this need to create stories. I was always thinking up stories. And yeah, I'd hold back because I would say, I'm not good enough yet. Or I can't write as good as this person, or I can't do this as good as this person. And at some point, I realized no one's going to give me permission. At some point, I have to give myself permission, and I have to believe in my work. And for some people, that's natural. For me, it's not. And so there was a journey of getting over that obstacle where I had to say, I give myself permission. This is important. This is who I am. So that was the first obstacle. And I don't even think I recognized it early in my career. It took a journey of self-discovery to realize that that was like the biggest thing. Nobody was holding me back. It was me holding me
Yeah,
back.
exactly.
Second obstacle, I would just say, is sometimes life throws you curveballs that you can't anticipate. Those might come in the form of like personal tragedies, crisis, grief, losing loved ones. And our family went through a hard stretch where my husband had cancer. He is fine, and he's now a 20-year cancer survivor, but that derailed things for a while for me. And then we adopted a son who had a genetic disease, and that took a lot of care. He took a lot of care, but it took a lot of time. I stopped writing during that time. Life will always throw you these obstacles that keep you from creating. And during some of those hard times when I wasn't creating, I felt sad, like almost like grief for having to set aside my art. But I knew these people are more important to me than my art. These are the people I love. And so it was good for me to set it aside. But that kind of delayed things. I think understanding that the delay doesn't mean you can't go back to it. That's the beautiful thing about creativity. I saw this woman who was a playwright after that playwriting competition that I won. And I remember I was going through one of these hard patches in my life where I was not writing for a while. And she saw me at like, I don't know, a store. And she said, "Oh, are you working on another play?" And I said, "No, I've had these things going on." And she said, "Well, that's the beautiful thing about writing is you can do it for the rest of your life." And it gave me that perspective of realizing that if you're going through a personal crisis, personal thing that's kind of derailed your creativity, that's not forever. And you can always come back to it. And the beautiful thing is we can do this into retirement. We can do this forever. Like we don't have to quit if we love it. So personal obstacles, I think, understanding that they're for a season, they're not permanent, and that you become stronger as a result of it. Those things I went through made me a better writer because now when I write about characters who are going through hard things, I understand that from a personal level. And I think as a performer, if you're a narrator, when you've gone through hard things, then you can bring that emotion to your voice and to that scene. And a basic acting method is putting yourself in the character's shoes and asking yourself, what would I do if I were that character? And I think it's easier to kind of hone in on those experiences and those feelings when you've been through hard times, even if it's not the same hard time as the character you're portraying. I think you can tap into those feelings. So personal obstacles can become your superpower eventually, I believe, because they make you stronger and they make you give you a depth to your creativity. I'm going to say that. The last personal obstacle for me was just honing in on my habits. And I know that a lot of people like to talk about habits and productivity, and it's become kind of a buzzword. But truly for me, understanding how I could work with my personality type, how I could make writing part of my personal habit was really important when I started writing books, because books are like running a marathon. Like still, even though I'm a lot faster and I know my process, it's still a marathon. I'm finishing a book right now. I mean, it's finished and it's coming out in a couple weeks, and it still felt like a marathon. And if I didn't have those habits in place, I would have never been able to finish it, because this is my longest book I've done. But I read books like Atomic Habits, Power of Habit, and took certain little tidbits and applied them to my life, found out what worked. And that really helped me hone in on regular discipline of writing, at least for me. So whatever your art, your craft is, if you're having trouble finding time for it, and it's a challenge with other commitments, if you have another job or a family or you're taking care of a parent, it's really hard, but habits will always help you to kind of hone in and find time for that thing that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. But I think I've said this to students that I've coached who are interested in voiceover. I said, the only way you learn something is by doing it. There is no other
Yes.
way. There's no other way. And to be really good at something, you have to be okay with being bad. You have to, because in the beginning, you're not going to be great. I don't want anybody to listen to the first audiobook I ever narrated, quite honestly, because it's not very good. I didn't do a very good job. It was, 10, 12 years ago. But I'm better. We're like vintage wine. We just get better
Yes.
with age. And I think with experience, you're absolutely right. You can draw from these experiences in your life to make you a better creator in whatever area that you're interested in creating in. And I think that there's value in that. But I do think a lot of people that begin are afraid to start because they're afraid they're not going to be, good enough. When I was a kid, I used to watch Wimbledon as a family. I still do to this day. We don't watch a lot of tennis, but we like to watch Wimbledon. We like to watch that one. And I remember as a kid watching it, and I'd ran out and I grabbed a racket and I wanted to go over to the rec and play tennis. And I played it for about 15 minutes before I realized I wasn't going to win Wimbledon. And then I stopped, right? Because as a kid, I was like, oh, well, this is hard,
Yes.
but if I kept playing, maybe I would have won Wimbledon. Probably not. But the point is that I gave up because I wanted to just jump all the way over to playing Wimbledon. And that's not how it works. It doesn't work in any endeavor. You've got to do it. And you've got to be willing to be bad for a little while to get good and to draw on those experiences and those setbacks. It's one of the hardest thing, I think, for people in general to take on is that fact. They see people on social media in particular who are successful at whatever they're doing,
Oh, yeah.
and they want to have instant success. I want to do that. And they don't look at the journey that you've been through and all those things that you had to overcome to get to the point where you are. And I know, again, that's kind of cliche, the iceberg, analogy, but it's true. It's true. It's a journey. And I think that as a creatives, we have to learn to really embrace the journey, love the journey, because if you're doing something that you love to do, I wanted to be in a job that I didn't want to ever retire from, which is what I'm doing now. And I think you're doing the same thing. And
Yes.
so I want to enjoy every minute of it, even the good and the bad. I just want to enjoy this process every single day because
Yes.
that's part of the joy, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I always tell people, like, you will be bad at the beginning, and it's so hard to accept that. And people will ignore your early works because you think when you put something out to the world that everybody's going to be like, it's amazing.
Well, you hope,
And then,
yeah.
and you hope. And then it's like crickets, and you're like, oh, this is so painful. I'm embarrassed. And yet there's nothing to be embarrassed of. That's normal. I think we need to normalize being bad and not having an audience and not having readers, and starting at the bottom with zero, and you work your way up one reader at a time. My career has been so slow. I am the slow and steady turtle entirely. It took me like 19 years to get my first book out, and now I'm producing them because I just had to get over the fear. I had to get
Yeah.
over that hump of being bad and possibly critical reviews and all the things that we think in our head, low star ratings. You have to get past that. And you think it won't be hard at all. And then as soon as you get ready to publish, you're like, I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I can handle the criticism. And you just take it one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't read the reviews.
Yeah, I have learned that the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, all of us audiobook narrators always, oh, we never read the reviews, but then we do. But then, but I know, A-list narrators who are in our industry, they're called the golden voices. There's like 35 golden voices. And I go and read some of their reviews just to make myself feel better. And
Yes.
there'll be reviews that are just awful of the people that are considered in our industry to be the best. And they're getting terrible reviews. So everybody gets bad reviews. Art is subjective, and not
It
everybody's going
is.
to like what you do. So anyway.
It is. It's funny you say that. I go and read my favorite authors' reviews occasionally to make me feel better for the
Yeah.
same reason, because some of my favorite authors, I cannot find a thing wrong with their books. You just
Somebody
go,
can.
yep, somebody hates it.
Somebody will find it. So let's talk a little bit about your experience having your work produced in audiobook form. So I know you went from being a writer, and there's a lot of writers out there, and the writers that I talk to who have no idea how to do that. They've written a book, they know how to write, they know how to get that book done and get it out to the world. And then you talk to them about audiobooks, they're like, well, I have no idea how to do that. So what was that process like for you getting into that world?
Well, it's funny you bring it up. I came at it as a theater gal, thinking, oh, I could probably just record my own audiobook, not understanding all the things that have to happen with editing and how everything has to be timed and there can't be any other noises ever. Like it has to be so precise, the whole production aspect. When I started looking into it, I quickly realized this is technically way over my head and I don't have time to both record and write books. So I was like, okay, I want awesome people to do this. And there are kind of two ways that you can go about getting an audiobook done. You can go out and hire the people yourself. You can find them through ACX, which is Amazon's kind of platform for finding narrators. You can get them through other authors, and other authors have names. Other authors are a great resource. You go and you listen to audiobooks and you go, "Ooh, I really like that person's voice," and you write down their name. You can often find people's social media profiles, their websites. A lot of audiobook people have all those things. So you just need to go look for them and contact them personally and find out what their wage is for, usually it's per finished hour, as I understand. And I was going to do that hiring out myself when I was approached by an audiobook company. This was for the series you did, was by Tantor Publishing. And they approached me and said, hey, we'd love to buy the rights to this series, and they help you find the audiobook narrators. But what was fun, the part I loved in this process, so they took care of most of the just all the logistics surrounding that, was getting to hear your audition, Mike, and Jeannie's audition too. My favorite part. Like I was so thrilled when I got it via email and I got to listen to it, and your voice was like perfect. Like I knew right away, this is the guy. That was the fun part. So they'll often ask authors to either listen to the voice they think would work best or several voices, and then I get to weigh in on that. That was really fun. And then I got to listen to the female part with Jeannie, and that was fun too. That was almost harder for me because I think as a female writer, I hear the voice of the female more specifically than the man. And so I had to get used to hearing her voice instead of mine, which is a me thing, not a her thing, because she's amazing. But I think that's one of the things you don't realize when you're listening to these auditions. And just for your audiobook narrators, if they're doing these auditions, just know how important it is to the author, because I appreciated hearing the voices first in that process. And that helped me to think through the characters and will this work, and kind of the inflection, the tonal quality, all those things that we think about when we write. Now we have to think about it from a performance aspect. And so that was one of my favorite parts. And then, of course, you guys did your thing, and then I got notification when it was done. And so it was a lot easier going through an audiobook publisher. If you are a writer and you're interested and you've not had an audiobook publisher like contact you directly, you can always contact them. There's usually a page on their website where you can contact them. You can basically pitch them your series, tell them everything about it, like pitch it the same way you would pitch a regular publisher, and telling them about how wonderful your series is. It feels like you're trying to pump yourself up, but you do need to present it in a way that's compelling for them. So they're going to want to say, yeah. And then if you have sales data to accompany that, if you have social media followers that you can say, hey, I have this many social media followers, I'll help you promote it. Then you might get a response, and you want to go through the acquisitions agents through an audiobook publisher. And there are several really big publishers like Tantor, Podium, Dreamscape. There are probably others too that I'm forgetting, but those are three of the big ones that will that are interested. They're interested in indie authors, which I am. They're interested in hybrid, which would be those who do traditional publishing and indie, and then they do the traditional publishing side too, although that in those cases they're often working with whoever the traditional publisher is, if it's like Penguin, Random House or whoever. But as an indie, they work directly with me. And so you do have to sign a contract and kind of go through their process, and you have to be okay with, of course, giving your rights up for the audiobooks, which at first I was not sure I was okay with, but then I'm glad I did it now because I'm just at a point where I needed some help in that process because I have kids, I have, a life outside of writing, and I need to focus on writing the books rather than all the admin stuff. And so that was a huge help for me. So that was my end of the process. I don't know how it was on your end, Mike. Hopefully they made it smooth for you.
Yeah, I mean they're wonderful. I do a lot of work with Tantor, and they, for audiobook narrators who are listening too, there are publishers which you had mentioned, people like companies like Penguin Random House, Simon and Schuster, Hachette, Harper Collins. They're publishers of books, and oftentimes they are producing their own books, but they also oftentimes go through producers. So I've done books for Harper through B Audio, for example. I've done works
Okay.
for Hachette through Lepton Productions. And so they oftentimes will work with producers. Tantor is considered a producer of audiobooks. They purchase the rights, and as you said, and they will handle all of that for me as an audiobook narrator. It's also wonderful to work with companies like that because they handle all the editing and proofing. So they take
Mm,
that all off of my plate. So I have to supply raw narration and clean files, and then they will send us back a proof sheet that has all the mistakes we made, hopefully very few, and then we record those corrections, and then their editors insert those into the chapters. So that's kind of the process on our end, which allows us, just like you get to focus on being a writer. I get to
mhm.
focus on being a narrator. And even the books that I've done through ACX, I also have editors and proofers that I pay to do that for me because, again, it allows me to do my job. And then I hire professionals who are really good at what they do, which is proofing, editing, and mastering the files. And I let them do their job. So it really is, as everybody can hear, really a team effort from obviously the writer to the
It
narrator to the
is.
producer and the editor and the proofer. These people are so important to this process. There's not only one person ever involved in making these books a reality. So it's a really good opportunity for I imagine if you as a writer who don't want to get bogged down in the technical aspect of it, to be able to work with somebody like a Tantor. And then on the ACX side of it, the job for the narrator is, so if let's say you had come to me via ACX and said, "Hey Mike, I want you to audition for this book," and you make me an offer to narrate that, you're making me an offer to produce it. So I am
Mm,
responsible for fully producing that book and getting it ready to go up on Audible. And so that's a whole different world. So people that narrate on ACX, they wear both the narrator and producer hat. And if you don't job that out, if you don't have somebody else do it, like I just mentioned, a lot of people will do it themselves. I did my first 5 books myself. I narrated them, I proofed them,
wow.
I edited them and mastered them until the point where I, came to my senses and said, I need to, stop doing this because it takes a lot of time. For every finished hour you narrate, it takes you usually about an hour and a half to actually narrate it. So that's
Yeah.
about the ratio for me anyway. If you're newer, it's going to take you longer. And then it's about a 6-to-1 ratio of editing time to recording time. So you can see where that
Man.
will really take up a lot of your time if you're doing both. And I just learned
Wow.
early on that I'd rather focus on being a narrator. And a funny story about when I auditioned for your book, we were actually on vacation and I had to record it on my phone and with a blanket over my head and pillows because I said to the casting director, I'm like, look, this is not going to sound good quality wise. I said, but I can record it on my phone, which I did. And fortunately, you still you still liked it because I was just really worried that the quality just was not going to be there. But I made it clear to her that obviously it was recorded on my phone, but you liked it anyway, so yay.
I did. And, it came through email, and maybe I just
It's
kind of
probably,
ignored
yeah,
quality because email can downgrade the
can
quality of
mess up the
things.
quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't even think about that. That's hilarious that you recorded it on vacation. Well, thank you for like going above and beyond.
Oh, believe me, when I saw the email, I was thrilled. I was thrilled to have the opportunity because the nice thing about Sweet Romance, and I like to focus a lot on Sweet Romance because, like you said, it's like a Hallmark movie. It's sweet. It's wholesome. It's a beautiful storyline, and so it's fun. And the nice thing about doing fiction is that we as voice actors get to act, which is what we want to do. I mean, obviously, I do a
Yes.
lot of nonfiction as well, which is still you still have to act in a certain sense, but being able to take on those characters, as we talked about earlier, is a lot of fun. So yeah, so Sweet Romance is wonderful. Um, in terms of sticking with this audiobook work for a while, having now been through the process, um, I imagine this now kind of becomes like a whole new world for you, because you were a writer for a while. Now all of a sudden you're a writer who gets to you're opening up this whole new source of people who can experience your work. What has that been like?
Well, that was one of my goals from the start is because of my theater background, I wanted to see it kind of come to life. And I wanted it produced in audiobook form. And so that's been on my bucket list as a writer for ages, for since I started publishing. And so I was thrilled, like absolutely thrilled when I found out Tantor wanted it. And I was like, this is going to be so much faster than me trying to do everything. And when it came out, I just was ecstatic. It took me a little bit to get it organized, but I have so many wonderful readers who have Bookstagram accounts. Which, if you don't know what Bookstagram is, it's an Instagram account for books. It's people who love books so much that they dedicate their account to books. And I went to some of these Bookstagrammers and I was like, look, I have the audio coming out for these books, and I want people to know about it because the books had already come out, the printed books, the ebook and the paperback, but I want people to know about the audio. And so I got a bunch of them were super excited who also said, I love audiobooks. Even though I've already read the book, I want the audiobook. And so I have these amazing Bookstagrammers talking about the audio now. I mean, they do it just for fun because they were excited too. And that has been so satisfying to hear them talk to me. They'll like send me a message and they're like, I just love this part in the audiobook. And it's fun to get those kind of reactions from them. One of my goals that I haven't done yet is I would love to pull more of the clips from the audio and put them on social media because I think that really helps people to get a sense of the book and entices them to listen. And I know, at least for women, and I'm sure this is true for men too, but my audience is largely women, probably 99% women. A lot of women listen to it on the go, audiobooks. They listen to it in their car. They listen to it while they're doing dishes or running their kids somewhere. And so it's not just a matter of bringing it to life, which I personally love, but also it's just practical. And I think this is where the future is going. Honestly, audio is big, and I want to be involved in that. I want to see my books come into audio, into any form that I can, because I think in the future with technology, we'll see books come to life in so many different formats, including audio and more of the what do they call it when it's okay, the term just dropped out of my mind when it's an audio production with many voices and like even sound effects.
Yeah, like an audio drama.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like that would be my next goal when it comes to audio stuff. And I don't know. We'll see. That's a lot more money to do it that way.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's a really good idea. And I think the opening it up to people that not only there's a certain segment of people that exclusively listen to audiobooks because they just like it better or they just don't have the time.
Yes.
There are other people that will read the book and then want to hear it in audiobook form. And there are other people I know of who read the book while listening to the book.
Yes.
At the same time. So they co-read with the narration. And that's kind of cool too, because they get to read and listen to it coming to life as they're reading. So there's a whole nother, category of people that you're appealing to. It just makes so much sense, if you can do it to get it out there in audiobook form. So, and it was great. It was great working with you. And as I said before we started to record, I just think, and people, before we finish up, I'll have you tell where people can find you. But the way that you engage your audience on social media, I think, is very effective. Your book covers are great. They're colorful. They're fun, and you just do a really nice job of engaging your audience in allowing them to participate in what is obviously very joyful for you. So just kudos to you for how you're doing that on social media.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your wonderful voice, for lending it to this series. So many readers have told me how much they loved hearing you play the different parts. So thank you for that.
It was a lot of fun. So Before we wrap up, though, I want to have to ask you that. That's one piece of advice that I ask everybody. If you had to give, let's say, an aspiring writer or an aspiring creative in general,
Yeah.
one piece of advice, what do you think that would be?
I'm going to go back to what my first obstacle was when I said I needed to give myself permission. I would say my one piece of advice is to give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to fail. Give yourself permission to do art badly. Give yourself permission to be afraid, but still put it out there and still say yes to whatever you're feeling called to create. And that's the most important thing. Sometimes it takes having an accountability partner to help you stay on that path. So find a writer's group, find a writing buddy who will help you give yourself permission and say yes to whatever it is. You're like, this fulfills me. I love it. It fills a need in my life. Don't let the voices stop you. Don't let imposter syndrome stop you. Go out, keep doing it. You're going to get better and you're going to build an audience, one reader, one listener at a time.
I love it. Be afraid, but do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it. So, Grace, thank you. Before we wrap up, where can people find you?
Well, you can definitely find me at my website, graceworthington.com, but you can also find me on Amazon or any of the major book platforms. All my ebooks are in Kindle Unlimited, which means if you're part of that subscription, you can read any of my books for free. Right now, they're all in there. But my paperbacks you can find on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, a bunch of other places. So just look up Grace Worthington. You should find it. And the series that he narrated was the Renovation Romance Rom-Com series. If you love HGTV and kind of that whole thing of redoing houses while falling in love, that was how I came up with the series. I think you'll enjoy this series because it's kind of like Fixer Upper meets I don't know, When Harry Met Sally, like kind of those merging of my rom-coms from the 80s and 90s with HGTV.
I highly recommend them. They're really fantastic books, not just because I was part of the narration. They're just really, really fun books to listen to and to read for sure. So, Grace, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your journey with my listeners. And I wish you continued success on your journey.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the Mike Lenz VO Podcast. Head on over to MikeLenzVOPodcast.com for links and recaps of each show. Catch you next time on the Mike Lenz VO Podcast.